We often imagine the pharaohs of ancient Egypt as distant stone-faced gods, carved in granite, existing in a perpetual state of royal ceremony or overseeing the construction of their own monumental tombs. They seem more like symbols of power than actual human beings. But beneath the double crown and behind the ceremonial false beard was a man, or occasionally a woman, whose daily life was governed by a rigid, divinely ordained schedule. Their day was not one of leisure and arbitrary command, but a meticulously structured performance of kingship, a relentless cycle of duties designed to maintain the cosmic order itself, known as Ma'at. To step inside a pharaoh's day from dawn to dusk is to understand that the ruler of the two lands was, in many ways, the most tightly scheduled and spiritually burdened individual in the kingdom. The pharaoh's day began before the sun itself had triumphed over the darkness. In the cool, pre-dawn stillness of the royal bedchamber, attendants would be stirring. The king slept within a palace complex, typically built of mud brick and brightly painted. Designed for coolness and comfort rather than the eternity of a pyramid, his awakening was a sacred event. He would be roused not with abrupt noise, but with ritual chants and hymns praising the sun, God Ra, aligning his own awakening with the daily rebirth of the solar deity. This was the first and most crucial parallel of the day. The pharaoh was the living embodiment of Horus, the son of Osiris, but he was also intrinsically linked to Ra. As Ra navigated the sky, the pharaoh would navigate his earthly duties, and both were essential for the world to function. His first ablutions were performed, not merely for hygiene, but for ritual purity. He would cleanse his mouth with a paste of natron and water, and wash his body with water scented with lotus or frankincense. Purity was not just about cleanliness, it was a state of being required to interact with the gods and perform his sacred office. With his body purified, the pharaoh's first major duty was a private audience with his most trusted officials. The vizier, the high priest of Amun, and the chief military commanders. This early morning meeting, often held over a light breakfast of bread, fruit and beer or wine, was the strategic heart of the empire. Here, away from the pomp of the public court, the real business of state was conducted. The vizier, the pharaoh's chief minister, would present reports on the kingdom's administration, the state of the granaries, the progress of tax collection from the nomes, provinces, and any legal disputes of national importance. The military commanders would deliver intelligence from the borders, news of the Hittites in the north, the Nubians in the south, or the Libyans to the west. The high priest would report on the status of the major temple estates, which were vast economic enterprises in their own right. The pharaoh's role here was that of chief executive. He listened, questioned, and made decisions. He would authorize grain shipments to a region suffering a poor harvest, approve the deployment of troops to a restless border, or decree the allocation of resources for a new public works project. These were swift, pragmatic meetings, setting the operational agenda for the day ahead. Following this, the pharaoh would undergo the elaborate and symbolic transformation from man to god-king. This was the lengthy process of being dressed for the day. A team of royal dressers and wig makers would attend to him. He would be anointed with fine oils, myrrh, cedar, and lotus, their scent marking him as separate from ordinary mortals. The iconic regalia was applied with ritual precision. The shendit kilt, the ornate pectoral collar, armlets and bracelets, often adorned with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and gold. The royal cobra, the uraeus, was affixed to his headdress, a potent symbol of his power to strike down the enemies of Egypt. Finally, the ceremonial false beard, symbolically linking him to the god Osiris, would be tied on. This entire transformation was a performance of power, designed to create a visual and olfactory distinction between the ruler and the ruled. When he emerged from his private apartments, he was no longer just a man. He was the living incarnation of the state. The most public part of the pharaoh's morning was the daily audience, or sitting in the window of appearances. This was a carefully staged event where the pharaoh, resplendent in his full regalia, would appear at a ceremonial balcony or window overlooking a central court. Here, he would be visible to court officials, favored nobles, and sometimes even the common people. This was not a chaotic town hall meeting. It was a ritualized display of his role as dispenser of justice and bounty. Officials would present him with tribute, gold rings, jars of incense, exotic animals, or valuable timber from Lebanon. More importantly, he might listen to select petitions. A nobleman might be granted a promotion or a parcel of land. A general who had shown great bravery might be awarded the Gold of Valor, a ceremonial collar. The common people, if they were allowed to be present, might catch a glimpse of their god-king and receive small favors or hear a legal judgment. This event was crucial for maintaining the loyalty of the elite and reinforcing the hierarchical structure of society. It was theater, but theater with a profound political purpose. As the sun climbed towards its zenith, mirroring Ra's journey across the sky, the pharaoh's duties often turned to his primary religious responsibility, the performance of rituals in the temple. While the daily cult rituals in Egypt's great temples, like Karnak or the Ramesseum, were performed by high priests on the pharaoh's behalf, there were many occasions, especially during major festivals, when the king was expected to perform the rites himself. We can imagine him proceeding in a grand palanquin or chariot from the palace to the temple, a cloud of incense and the sound of sistrums announcing his arrival. Within the temple's sacred confines, in the dark, incense-heavy atmosphere of the inner sanctuary, he would stand before the statue of the god, Amun-Ra, Ptah, or Ra-Harakti. The ritual was precise and ancient. He would break the seal on the shrine, cleanse the statue, anoint it with oil, dress it in fresh linen, and present offerings of food, drink, and incense. He would then recite prayers, not for his personal benefit, but for the maintenance of Ma'at and the continued favor of the gods towards Egypt. In this act, the pharaoh was the chief priest of every god in the pantheon, the essential link between the divine and the human world. A failed ritual was not a personal failure. It was a cosmic one, potentially leading to chaos, famine, or invasion. The afternoon might allow for a brief respite, but it was rarely a time of idleness. This period was often dedicated to the pharaoh's role as commander-in-chief. He would travel to the royal training grounds to inspect his troops. For a warrior pharaoh like Thutmose III or Ramesses II, this was not a mere formality. He would observe military drills, review new conscripts, and examine newly forged weapons and chariots. He might even step into his own chariot for a display of his legendary archery skills, a powerful piece of propaganda demonstrating that his divine strength was still potent. This direct engagement with the military was essential for morale and for projecting an image of strength, both to his own army and to potential enemies. Other afternoons might be spent in a different kind of inspection, visiting a major construction site. While the popular imagination has the pharaoh wielding a whip over the slaves building the pyramids, the reality for most pharaohs was oversight of their mortuary temple or additions to great temples like Karnak. He would meet with his chief architect, the vizier, and the master craftsman, reviewing plans carved onto limestone flakes or ostraca, approving designs for new columns or statues, and ensuring the project was progressing according to the divine blueprint that ensured its efficacy in the afterlife. A less visible but equally important afternoon activity was the pharaoh's engagement with his own family and education. The royal nursery was a hub of activity, housing the king's many children. The pharaoh was expected to spend time with his heir, the crown prince, instructing him in the arts of kingship, reading dispatches with him, teaching him statecraft, and ensuring a smooth succession. The royal wives and secondary wives, along with their children, were a central part of the court structure, and their management was a political necessity. Alliances were forged and broken through marriage, and the pharaoh's time with his family was an extension of his diplomatic duties. Furthermore, the pharaoh himself was expected to be a scholar. He might spend time in the House of Life, the institution attached to the temple that served as a library, scriptorium, and university. Here, he could consult with priests and scribes on matters of theology, astronomy, medicine, and law, ensuring his decisions were informed by the vast accumulated knowledge of Egypt's scribal tradition. As the sun began its descent, marking the approach of Ra's dangerous journey through the underworld, the pharaoh's schedule would shift once more. The late afternoon was often the time for recreation, but even this was imbued with symbolic meaning and political utility. The pharaoh might go hunting in the royal preserves, pursuing lions, hippos, or wild bulls. This was not just sport. It was a symbolic reenactment of the victory of Horus over the god Seth, the embodiment of chaos. By triumphing over these powerful, chaotic beasts, the pharaoh was publicly demonstrating his role as the protector of Egypt from the forces of disorder. Other forms of recreation included listening to music in the gardens of the palace, playing the board game Senet, which symbolized the journey of the soul through the underworld, or being entertained by court musicians and dancers. While these activities provided relaxation, they were also a display of the prosperity and culture that his righteous rule, his maintenance of Ma'at, had secured for the kingdom. The evening brought with it a return to formality and family. The main meal of the day was an opulent affair, but it was rarely a private family dinner. It was a court event. The pharaoh would dine at a separate table, elevated above his guests, who included high-ranking officials, foreign dignitaries, and favored members of the royal family. The food was a testament to Egypt's wealth. A variety of breads, fish from the Nile, roasted duck and goose, figs, dates, grapes, and honeyed cakes. Wine and beer flowed freely. While musicians and dancers performed, the dinner was still a political space. Conversations here could be as important as those in the morning meetings, forging alliances and gauging loyalties in a more relaxed, though still highly structured atmosphere. The pharaoh, however, remained the central, slightly distant figure, his elevated status a constant reminder of his divinity. Finally, as full darkness fell and the stars emerged, the pharaoh would retire to his private apartments. The elaborate process of being undressed from his regalia was the reverse of the morning's transformation, symbolically shedding the divine office to become a man once more. He would undergo another ritual purification, washing away the burdens of the day. In these quiet final moments, he might spend time with his chief wife, the great royal wife, a partner whose own role was vital in the religious and political life of the country. He might offer a final private prayer to the household gods or to his personal protector deity. Then he would sleep in a chamber guarded and protected by spells and amulets. His rest was not just for his body, but for his spirit, which, like Ra, was believed to travel through the perils of the underworld each night, to be reborn, victorious, with the dawn. And with that dawn, the entire cycle would begin again. The chants, the purification, the meetings, the rituals, an endless performance of duty designed to ensure that the sun would rise, the Nile would flood, and the world of Egypt would remain forever in perfect and harmonious order. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more deep dives made simple. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. See you in the next one.